Hey, you are listening to Oh Crap Parenting with me, your host, Jamie Glowacki. This is a podcast for conscious parents who drop the F-bomb a lot. Hey guys, welcome. Thanks for spending time with me today. I truly appreciate it. If you are watching this on YouTube, you'll notice I have the humidity glisten about my face. I don't know where you live, but I'm in Rhode Island and it is ridiculously humid this week. So anyway, if you see some sweat, it's all natural. Today I want to talk about Inside Out too. If you haven't seen it, you might want to hold off on this episode just because probably going to be some spoiler alerts, though I don't think there was anything terribly shocking about the movie. Before we jump in though, I want to let you know about some noises. So I don't think I told you guys, I have chickens, and a few months ago we had a massive coyote attack, and we're really not sure it happened because with Maverick around, he just, barks like a fool and keeps the coyotes at bay. Anytime we've lost chickens, it's been like when we've been out for the day and he's been in daycare and there's nobody sort of guarding the property. But this happened. It was very bizarre to us because the chickens get locked up at night. They didn't get them at night and Maverick was around. So we're not really sure how it happened, but I had gone out in the morning to walk Maverick. And when I got home, I got out of my car and I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot of feathers on the ground. But sometimes they molt, sometimes they drop feathers, And then I started walking and I saw clumps of feathers and I was like, oh my God. And so that was our whole flock. We found two left behind. And then the next day, one of those got taken by a hawk. Then we had to give the other one away because chickens aren't solitary creatures. They're flock animals. Like all of us, I guess, right? So then we got little chicks and we had brand new chicks and you keep those and we keep them in a dog crate. And what you do is you put something around the bottom so that they can't squeeze through the little things. Well, something got into the shed that we keep that in. I don't know if it was a fox or a fish or cat or a raccoon, but they take the chicks through the crate, the slots in the crate, and take their entrails out. They break their neck, they take their entrails out. And what happens is the poor chicks, they die contorted in pain. Now, when they're babies, you keep a heat lamp on them. So like the shed already looked like hell, right? Because we had this red heat lamp. And oh my God, it was awful. It was awful. All the chicks were dead. So then we decided, okay, we've got to super fortify everything. You take a thing called hardwire cloth. If you're not familiar with that, it's almost like a very small square print fencing. Chicken wire doesn't do anything. And then so we put that around the dog crate. We got new chicks. And now we have 21 chickens. And out of those 21 chickens, we have what looks like to be 5 roosters. It takes them a while. And so the roosters have just started to crow. So that long story was to tell you, if you hear a lot of crowing, that is what is going on. The other day I was doing one of the potty training podcasts and we had some sort of military thing going on with low-flying planes. And then we also have Maverick, who simultaneously feels the need to defend the chickens from any blade of grass or leaf falling, but then also feels like he has to be on guard for all his stuff to protect from the chickens. So he's a little on high alert. So welcome to Jamie's Barnyard, and please excuse all the noises and me sweating. All right, so let's move on. So if you haven't seen Inside Out 2, again, I highly recommend it. I think it is number one for parents. I do not think it has the ease and charm, I want to say, of Inside Out 1 that a lot of people could get, a lot of kids could get, because the emotions were your basic emotions, right? Your anger, your sadness, your joy, And so I think that was easier for younger kids. And certainly there were some very, funny moments, as there are in Inside Out 2. But it really is a framework for the teenage, preteen going into teen years. And I thought it was handled really well, except for a few things that I'd like to discuss. And I thought some things were flat out brilliant. And I'm going to mention them because I saw it with a friend. She brought her kids who were 8, 10, and 13. And the 13-year-old brought a friend. And I even think a lot went over the 13-year-olds' heads. Like when we talked about it later, they sort of didn't catch a lot because they're in the thick of it. And this was sort of about, I think what the Inside Out 2 does a really great job of is giving you the framework of what years look like. But of course, they truncated it into a movie, which I think is you have to do because you only have like an hour and 45 minutes to do all this. But I also think it was a detriment if you're unprepared for the teen years. It may make you think like all this stuff is happening in different time frames than it is. And the younger ones got the funny, there's some slapstick humor in it, and they got that, but there were so many things that went over their heads. But actually, as I was discussing it with friends, a lot of these things I thought people didn't catch as well. So I just want to bring them out. One thing that I thought they handled brilliantly was sarcasm. And it was really funny because my friend didn't get it at all. So, they picture, if you remember, sarcasm was a literal chasm. They were in that stream of consciousness, and all of a sudden I love the stream of consciousness as well, but the chasm, broke through and almost looked like Grand Canyon. And they were asking for help from the construction workers on the other side. And they were trying to they even said, I think Joy said, look, if we're really nice, maybe they'll help us. And so as they were speaking, they were like, hi, how are you guys? And as it went over the sarcasm, it was distorted. So the construction workers heard it as, hi, how are you? And they were like, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact thing, but you're doing such a great job. We're wondering if, we need a little bit of help. And what the construction workers, as those words went over the sarcasm, the construction workers heard it as, oh, you're doing such a great job. I can't even, I need some help, right? And so what I want to warn you about is sarcasm is going to hit your kids at a certain age. And not only are they going to get sarcastic with you, so they paralleled this in the movie. It was like they kept switching over to Riley had found a new group of friends and was being really sarcastic with her old friends as like a sort of coping mechanism of not being able to meld the two and not wanting to feel like she was younger in the face of these older, newer friends. And so it pointed out that sarcasm comes into the teen brain and gets used liberally. But what I thought was particularly brilliant is how I think it gets distorted to people who are hearing it. And that I think with kids especially, not only can their sarcasm land wrong with us, but I think then when we turn around at that age and we try to be nice and we're like, okay, fresh slate today. Hey buddy, how you doing? They can hear it as, hey, how are you doing? They can hear it as, the perception of the words going over the sarcasm can be distorted. And I thought that was so brilliant because that's been my experience. Like sometimes the teenagers will get very reactive because they're hearing it different than the way you mean it. And all parents will go through this phase where they're like, oh my God, I can't say anything. I say hi and they have an attitude about it or they're upset with me. And so I also thought they handled the brainstorm, like a brainstorm was a literal storm. I loved how they handled that. And I liked how they handled the belief systems. So, her belief system was this beautiful tower. It looked lacy. It looked like ice crystal, beautiful snowflakes. It was really lovely. And then as she built her belief system on anxiety, right? Anxiety was one of the emotions that started to take over. And when anxiety first appeared on the scene, I was sure that anxiety was a fawning trauma response. But then again, that's my trauma response. So of course I saw that. I don't think I'm an anxious person, but if you see it through the light of a fawning trauma response, I guess I fall into that category at times. And how they built the belief system on these like sort of lightning bolts that were jagged and, you could see that it wasn't as flowing, right? I mean, it was a visual representation of like, and I loved how that was done. And that there is a thing called peer orientation. In fact, Gabor Mate wrote a book called hold on to your kids. And that was one of the books that I, that sort of, folded into my decision to homeschool. There is a point where your kids are peer oriented. They're more oriented to their peers than to you. And so, the book is about sort of fighting for the family unit so that your kids at least have you to go to, because peer orientation is great for some things, for, what's in style, the latest slang, but it's not great for bigger problems and or when kids don't know things. I mean, peer orientation when I was younger looked like, oh, you can get pregnant sitting on a toilet seat. You can get pregnant in hot tubs. That's what peer orientation can do. Right? Because our parents certainly didn't talk about it too much. So it really does show how peer orientation can usurp the belief system you've worked so hard to instill in your kids. And it's a natural thing. It's going to happen. But again, while I liked how it was handled and I love the visual representation, and it is a real thing that happens, it's much slower. Again, they had to truncate it because it was a movie. They had to compress it, I should say, not truncate it, compress it. But I want to assure you that it doesn't happen that quickly. So I thought that some of the things in that compression of the teenage years, I thought it could get a little wonky for parents, because if you're using this as a roadmap, which I think you should, I think it's one of the best, overall roadmaps of what's to come. I think you could get confused or get panicky maybe about they come home with one or two things, about their friends, and you're like, this is it, this is happening, her belief system's being replaced, he's never going to listen to me. So it doesn't happen like that. Now, the biggest thing that happened for me when I was watching the movie is very early on in the movie, Riley goes to bed, Riley, good-hearted, in a good mood, all the basic emotions are there, Joy's running the control board, and she wakes up in the morning and she's got a pimple. And she is super volatile. She's volatile with her mom. And it clips to the mom, her emotion board, right? Like everybody's got these characters, anger, right? Anger, joy, sadness. I forget the green one, the popular, I forget that emotion. But the mom's board of emotions were like, oh, great, we're going to have this for the next 10 years. And her board of emotion I felt like was really shitty. It was like that old school boomer thing of like, teens are awful. You've got to lay down the iron rod. They're terrible. You've got to be boss. You've got to punish. You've got to, be on top of them, which I completely disagree with. And I was like, my heart sank because I was like, this was really early in the movie. And I was like, oh no, are we going to, that can't be what the movie's about, that teens suck. And then I really sat on it because again, I think the movie's brilliant. And again, I really think it's a great roadmap, but I sat on it for a long time because I was like, something's still bugging me about that moment in the film, because they did remedy it. It wasn't a book. It wasn't about that. And I realized that upon thinking about it, the volatility doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen overnight. And what I've been really vocal about the movie and talking about it with people. And what I have found is I have people in my life who parent that way, who do parent with like the teens are going to be, I'm all ready for it. Like they're ready for a fight. They're ready for contention. They're ready to come down on their teens as these kids are passing over into the teen years. And I'm like, maybe don't go into it wanting a fight, But I'm finding that these parents, and of course, this is a small sample size, so I can't say this is for everyone, they swear that the volatility happened overnight. And the parents that hold more of a view that I hold saw that it happened over time. It wasn't all of a sudden, And so it leads me to believe, again, small sample size, that if you're ready for a fight, if you're not connected to your kids in a really kind of soulful way, in a curious way that's authentic, that is rich that you've cultivated through that gardening phase, right? That's that gardening phase that I always talk about. 0 to 6 is governs, 0 to 6 is laying down the groundwork and the rules and the boundaries. And then 6 to 12 is gardening. So that 12, 12 to 18, 13 to 18, you get to guide. And so that's literally what it is. You've tilled the soil. You have this rich relationship and everything's starting to bloom. And now it's not that you're growing anything. The thing's growing like a weed. Now it's more about putting, maybe those steel things around the tomato plants so that they don't get too out of control and go way outside the garden box, And so, I have noticed, though, again, that there are people who seem a little more disconnected, a little more like going through the motions of parenting. And I'm going to do another podcast on this about the motions of parenting and how so many people are just trying to check off the boxes. Did we do this? Did we do sports? Did we do this? Did you get an A? Are we, did we go to Disney? Did we do this? I'm finding it even younger and younger. And that's how people are even approaching potty training is like, got to get it done. Got to get it done. Check the box, move on. And I'm like, well, these things are just growing things, like these are processes. And so I just want to let you know it doesn't happen overnight. And so really spend these 6 to 12 years, the 6 years old to 12 years old, really gardening that relationship so that these things kind of ease into you and it doesn't feel like you wake up one day and your kid's a different kid, because it almost never happens like that. And the thing I've also realized in, I know a lot of parents, I think something happens. So I've always said 11's the promised land. Like you're holding out for 11. 11 is the promised land because puberty hasn't hit for most kids, and puberty hasn't hit, but the synapses are all firing. And so 11, you get this respite of like, they're helpful and mannered and all the things you taught seem to be clicking and their executive functioning is like online now. And everything is like, oh my God, it's a trick. It's a trick because that all goes away. And so you want to be, you don't want to recognize that the phases of childhood as well as phases of becoming an adult, like I'm in a totally different phase right now. Pascal is, he's of course still living with me, but he's 18. He's doing his own thing. He's got his own path. And I'm going to be looking at empty nester, even if it's not like full empty nester, like not living here, but emotionally it can be, right? And so there are all these various phases. And if you're not kind of future casting for them, not future tripping, because I certainly am guilty as well of future tripping, but future casting of like, here's what's coming next. Let's get ready to go with the flow. And I know I've talked about like the sarcasm, the volatility, I've talked about it before in terms of like almost like a Tourette's thing. I know it's not a diagnosed thing, but it's almost like this stuff comes out of their mouth, their facial expressions, and they don't even really mean it. And so the next minute they'll hug you and say they love you. And so it feels a little roller coastery. And I've always said it's like you jump on a surfboard and you ride the waves. But I think what happens for a lot of parents is not really knowing 11, somewhere in that 11-year-old zone, it tricks you into thinking you've done an excellent job. Your kid is great. This is a cake ride now. And then when you do get that first dripping sarcasm, you do get that first like mind numbing eye roll that, you get that look. Oh my God, there's the look. The first time it happens, it's so disorienting, which is the look just says like, you are the stupidest, most uncool person I have ever met in my life. And why on earth would I listen to you? Like when you get it, you'll know it. But it feels like a knife to the heart. It feels like a sucker punch because you just came off the heels of this like beautiful 11-year-old promised land. Executive function goes away. So all of a sudden they can't organize their time, their stuff. Manners tend to take a dip. And it's this wild time that, again, like if you're not knowing it's coming, you're going to be shocked. And when you're shocked, you're going to be reactive. And so all of these things feel very disrespectful. Again, especially coming out of this like lull that you get somewhere around 11 years old. And so like, it feels like it's on purpose. It feels like it's targeted and at you, and it's meant to make you feel bad, but it's not. It's not. It's just the phase. Their brain's going haywire. Their hormones are going haywire. They've got things on their mind that they used to not have on their mind. Maybe it's girls or boys, or maybe somebody's getting into a little trouble in their friend group and they don't know what to do about it. There's all kinds of things that could be. Their minds get busy, you know? And so these things that feel like so horribly disrespectful, and these first things as they come into 12, 13, whatever age your kid hits that, like that sarcasm, that chasm, that precipice, right? Those first, I think that's where the contentious relationship can start, if it hasn't already, right? If you've parented with a heavy hand, over controlled, if you've really utilized rewards and punishments all the time, and that's going to be your MO, those first things that feel so disrespectful are going to jar you, and they're going to make you highly reactive, which is not going to help with a highly reactive, underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. It's not going to help the situation. So there's a lot of just coasting over those things, and you have to kind of be like, you're entering into a new zone. You're entering to a new zone with bigger problems and more serious things to, have conversations about, to be aware of. And those bigger things are where you're going to want to put your energy and your connection, and not your reactivity, but you're going to want to focus on those, because if you start getting reactive, you're going to be met with reactivity, and that's where you're going to lock horns. And that's when kids start shutting down. And I'm telling you right now, you do not want to shut your kid down at 13, 14. Once they shut down, you've stopped communication. And one of the things you really want to do is keep that communication open, because you want your kids coming to you when these bigger problems hit, so you can go through your value system, your belief system, even if it's helping another kid like get out of trouble. Like, they need adults in their life to guide them still, to not be that heavy hand. The heavy hand should have been 0 to 6. Yeah. And by that, I don't mean punishments and control and authoritarian, but the heavy-handed parenting is 0 to 6. That's where you're establishing the boundaries, the rules, how everything works, and that you are trustworthy, that if you say X, Y, and Z, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, whether it's a benefit or a consequence, So those things, if you are untrustworthy in 0 to 6, the 6 to 12 is not going to go well. And then the 12 to 18 is really not going to go well. And what you really are looking to do is keep that line of communication open. I've seen it across the board with so many parents, both professionally and personally. If the lines of communication shut down, you're screwed, because then your kid hopefully they have another adult in their life that they can go to. But does that adult have your value system? Does that adult have your belief system? Not that we have to indoctrinate our kids and they have to believe everything we believe, but core values, we want them to know what ours are. So that's our sort of beacon, right? Our compass. But yeah, so I just wanted to say that, because that moment in the movie really struck me as like, ooh, I hope people don't know, like, I hope they're not waiting for this like one day. And I hope that they don't miss those firsts. I hope you don't get reactive with those firsts. And, I was vocal when I think Pascal was 14, maybe 14 and a half, 15, when we had a couple of months that were rough, and it was all me. I was being reactionary. He was being his age. And, just like if we react to tantrums, it's not going to help. If we react to these things, it's not going to help, right? And so you can try. I mean, I watch parents lower the boom, and pretty soon there's no door on the kid's door. There's no door. They take the door down, so there's no door slamming. They take all the privileges away, and the kid still is just contentious, because that doesn't help, right? And it's not like I'm saying you have to kiss your teen's ass, because you don't, but you want to keep a really good connected relationship again. So if trouble comes up, you're the person they come to. You don't want to be the person. I've seen this like graphic floating around, right? Where it's like, I don't want my kid's first thought to be, I can't tell mom I'm going to get in trouble. I want my kid to think, I'm going to call my mom. She'll know what to do. And that's what we want to keep super open for our kids. All right. If you have thoughts about Inside Out too, I'd love to hear them. Like I said, I think it's a movie for parents. I think you can take little kids. The animation, the colors are great. There are some funny moments, but don't expect even your preteens or your early teens to fully understand what's going on because their brain is in the thick of it. So it's like if somebody kind of, it's just like, I don't know. I'm watching it go over a lot of kids' head, but that's okay because I think it's a great roadmap for us. Just the timing. Just realize the timing is going to be spread out over years, not necessarily, the hour and 40 minutes or however long the movie was. All right, guys. As always, I appreciate you. If you are looking for parenting support, love to have you in our Oh Crap Cafe. That's our parenting community, not potty training. There's been some confusion where people are joining for potty training advice. This is just for parenting help, and that I'll leave the link for that in the show notes. So as always, I appreciate you listening. Share this podcast if you found it helpful. You want to discuss it with friends. That would be awesome. And rock on. I hope you have a beautiful day.
Okay, bye everyone. Just a reminder, if you need additional resources, I have Oh Crap Potty Training. I have Oh Crap, I Have a Toddler. Those books are available everywhere you want to find a book. You can also go to my website, jamieglowacki.com, where you can book private sessions with me, buy any of my courses. Those are really geared towards potty training help. And also I'm on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook anymore and I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, jamie.glowacki, and I do a lot of lives and usually posting a lot of good information. So those are extra resources for you. And as always, rock on. Have an awesome day.